Welcome back to the Kickstand Effect, the show where we dive headfirst into the chaotic, fast-moving intersection of AI, cybersecurity, and modern compliance. I'm your host, Travis Garland, founder of Kickstand AI in my compliance citadel. Today, we're unpacking the reality of AI-driven software development, the hidden risks of agentic workflow, and how platforms like My Compliance Citadel and Xenable are re-engineering how regulated industries manage governance. Joining me is cybersecurity expert and Xenable founder Jon Zeolla, who shares how AI is compressing a year's worth of coding into a matter of days while radically shifting how we enforce standards. In this episode, we'll tackle first exploring why hyper-speed AI coding creates underspecified business logic and endless slop. Second, diving into how specialized 24/7 AI agents inspect code bases, eliminate dead code, and continuously optimize software performance. And third, revealing how streaming real-time operational data completely replaces painful quarterly compliance fire drills. If you want to know how to scale your digital workforce without handing control over to a game of AI telephone, stick around. Let's jump into the episode. All right, Jon, welcome to the podcast, sir.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. I will jump into this with a series of some rapid fire questions that I love to throw at people. Some of them will
Mm,
be a little bit off kilter, maybe a little whimsical, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes with you. I'm gonna kick off with a pretty easy one. We seem to be, I'm gonna guess, maybe about the same age, at least within a few years of each other. So here's one that you may be able to relate to. First question for you: Terminator or Wall-E? Which AI is closer to winning your heart?
Terminator, definitely Terminator.
Terminator.
Yeah,
Feel ya. Deep fakes, awesome technology or total nightmare?
awesomely nightmarish.
Yeah, that's fair. I dig it. I don't know about this one. How about a jury of your peers? Do you want 12 angry humans or one flawless supercomputer?
Oh, the supercomputer, definitely.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you. How about this one? If an AI clones your voice, is it identity theft or is it flattery?
I I would actually say identity theft. Yeah.
From a guy who's in the cybersecurity space, probably not too surprising. How about casting? Keanu Reeves or a perfect CGI hologram of Keanu Reeves?
hmm. The perfect CGI. I mean, you can't get better than a hologram, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how much it's going to cost for a full hologram of a movie to happen. Like I don't really know when
Yeah.
that's going to ever be the case, but I don't know.
Yeah. We'll see.
You know what? We have had our own little technical difficulties on getting this podcast rolling today. So here's a really pointed question here: the future, flying cars or just better Wi-Fi?
Oh, I sure hope we can have both. That'd be great if we could have both, but I always
That
wanted to
would.
have my own flying car, so I'll go with flying cars. But man, I
All
could go
right,
for
I
both.
dig it. I dig flying cars. Okay, I could use better Wi-Fi right now because I know we got a little bit of a thing going on. But chatbots, polite assistance or low-key plotting?
Low key, locally
Low-key
plotting.
plotting.
Yeah, yeah.
Immortality, uploading your brain to a computer or a legal night. I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. Let me try this one again. Immortality is it uploading your brain to a computer? Is it a legal nightmare or is it a healthcare miracle?
Oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way. Um, I don't know. Miracle maybe. That's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm gonna have to think about that a bit. Hmm.
This is going to go against my rapid fire question piece here, but where everybody's rolling up voice agents and RAG models connected and all those kinds of things. Obviously that's not a brain, right? But man, we tend to describe it that way sometimes. Well, we'll see.
That's what it's
Very,
modeled after.
yeah,
It's a neural net.
we're
Yeah.
getting there. We're getting there. All right, diagnoses. Would you trust an AI doctor or your Med Gemini search?
So what was it? Med Gemini search?
Med Gemini, yeah, like the new GPT version of WebMD, if you will. Med Gemma, maybe if you want to call it that.
Okay. No opinion.
Oh, that's fair. Maybe you have an opinion on this one. I don't know. Lawyers, which is more intimidating, a robot attorney or a human one?
A human one. Definitely a human one.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we're nodding heads on a lot of these. Human ones still. And last but not least, this goes back to our generational relevance here. Will an AI ever shout, "You can't handle the truth" in court? Yes or
Oh,
no?
absolutely. Yes, yes, it must.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that you've crossed a line when the contextual knowledge and the capabilities of wittiness or maybe just awareness of the courtroom. I feel
Hmm.
like if that ever were to happen, man, I think we're in a world of hurt, John. I don't know what else
Yeah.
to say about that, but
No,
that's a crazy space.
exactly. Some sort of
Um,
like rapport building that just kind of surprises you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, you're an esteemed professional in the space of AI, in all sorts of spaces of AI. I want to make sure before we get too deep into this, now that I've already asked you about flying cars and John Nicholson and whether or not you prefer robots in the courtroom or not. Um, Give us a little sense of yourself, where you're coming from, your perspective on things, a little bit about your company Xenable, and just launch us into this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so my background is kind of fiddling with cybersecurity things for the last 15 or 20 years, working at some large organizations. I started a consulting company a number of years ago, ran that for a while with the idea of helping a bunch of tech companies, which went extremely well. I learned a lot from that process and hopefully helped a few people while I was at it. Um, and the problem that I started Zenable with was this AI is going to help us move fast. And we already
Mhm.
had enough problems with trying to get people to follow or agree with a standard set of rules. What should we do? What shouldn't we do? And just have standards and enforce them. If we're going to 10x, 100x, 1000x the speed, and these agents are pretty
Mhm.
much going to do what they're told to do, how are we going to actually get out of them what we think we're going to get out of them? Like, can they even possibly ever meet our expectations? And
Okay.
that's on the cybersecurity side. That's on like any arbitrary requirements following. And so I built Zenable to help answer that question. How do we actually get these agents to write the code or just provide the results that we want them to provide?
Yeah. It feels like stepping out of my last corporate organization, the topic of what is AI going to be doing for developers was on the lips of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm hearing you talk about is it's not really just the matter of it helping to write code, but frankly, you're also talking about when code is written, how does it consistently upgrade itself over time, which is a whole different kind of conversation. So, as you think just generically before we get super deep into some of these spaces, AI and software development and agents, what do you think is driving this? What's your take on just where are we going at a super high level? Like where's AI in the coding space happening?
Yeah. So Anthropic came out with an interesting report a number of months back, which was the
Mhm.
impact of AI on different sorts of jobs. And one of those jobs was software development and engineering and other things like that.
Mhm.
And in the report, they said the potential is extremely high. Something like low 90 percentile of those job duties will be taken over by AI. But the current impact on it was more in the mid 20s, right? 24, 26% current impact with a potential future impact of like 92%. I really agree with that assessment. Like AI is going to augment people to go faster and do more and have higher quality
Mhm.
outputs. It's going to allow one person to do 1 year's worth of work in a day. And we're going to continue guiding and kind of directionally steering the results, what they're doing, with how they're prioritizing. But they're going to definitely be our assistants. They're going to be helping us figure out what do we do next, right? What's
Yeah.
the right priority of actions to take? And then specifically, how do we accomplish those? I think that report is pretty close to accurate, especially given like where we are now. Like things are crazy right now. Things feel really, really fast. I was actually just making tea an hour ago, and I was thinking, I was like, you know what? I wonder what the speed up actually is. But if I had to guess, it sure feels like from a year ago, just in the last year, where I had AI a year ago, but between
Hmm.
1 year ago and now, I feel like I do 2 weeks worth of work each day. That's kind of my gut feeling for just the past
Wow.
year, and I can't say, like, it does feel like that's going to continue, like at least for some foreseeable future, for the next 1, 2, maybe 3 years, that we're going to maybe compact. What's that, 10x or 14x, depending on how you
Yeah.
if you work weekends like me or not. Like that
Yeah.
feels about right. Like I definitely yesterday I did what would have taken me 2 weeks, maybe more than 2 weeks, but at least 2 weeks.
Wow. I mean, that's most people won't quantify it that clearly, but that's a pretty powerful statement. A day to 2 weeks is a pretty substantial productivity lift for sure. Let me ask you about what the risk is in that. Now you're sitting in a seat of a very competent expert level individual. A day of work in your hands means 2 weeks, and it probably means saving months and months of time for a lay person, right? Who might be, out there just experiencing this from what it was like 10 years ago when software development took, you know, 4 months for every one day now, right? Whatever that might be.
Mhm.
In the environment now where things like Claude Code has stood up, the capabilities for individuals that may not be at a level of a 25, 30-year veteran doing software development or architectural design or infrastructure setups, what kind of risks do you feel are going to come up when that happens?
Oh yeah, well I mean we've got risks today. We've got lots of risks
Mm.
today, and I think that I my guess is that some of them will kind of go away, right? Like so today we might use these tools to write software and it makes kind of silly mistakes, what we would consider like a business logic flaw, where it just didn't understand the problem well enough and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't choose to go do some research in the code base or read some documentation or anything like that, and it just
Okay.
made the wrong thing, right?
Okay.
We call this a underspecified problem, where the person using the AI didn't specify in enough detail what the agent should do or what the AI should do, and so it
Mm-hmm.
literally built the wrong thing. And those wrong things could be, in the finance world, it's the easiest. It allowed the wrong person to move money to bank accounts, right? Like that's
Okay.
you could design it like a feature, right? Like obviously we need to move money between bank accounts. It could do it the wrong way. I think that those problems will start to go away, where it was a very naive, like misunderstanding of the situation. You're building an online banking application, it moved money in the wrong way, or you're doing like hospital logistics. You
Mm-hmm.
decided to put things in the wrong building because you
Yeah.
wanted to put them in storage, but you also have to realize that storage might not be, if you need fast access to something, you don't put it in storage a mile away, right? But these like logistics software for healthcare might do those mistakes sort of today. I imagine that those problems will go away over time, but
Okay.
there's always this issue of trade-offs, right? And so every company makes their own version of trade-offs, and that is something that I struggle to foresee how AI could ever get it right without a lot of engineering to make sure it has the right information. Like the
Hmm.
information exists, it has access to it,
Okay.
things like that. And so those trade-offs are, you know, speed versus security. Like all of the time companies make these trade-offs, and we decide to be slightly less secure, and by that I mean not make it unsafe and let anybody be able to do anything, but maybe if an attacker got access to some highly privileged person's credentials, could they do something that would have a lasting impact, or would it have a short-lived impact? That's sort of a trade-off.
Hmm.
So um,
Okay.
and if the trade-off there cost you $50 million, but the impact of that mistake was $2 million, you should probably take the potential for the mistake to happen, right? And eat the $2 million
Hmm.
dollars instead of spending $50 million to prevent this issue, which also might never happen or might be very unrealistic to ever happen. Those are trade-offs. But
Yeah.
certain companies make different decisions with those trade offs, and those are the things that AI will continue to get wrong. And so the more that we let AI guide AI. I was talking to someone earlier today and they called it a game of
Mm,
telephone. I'm like, absolutely, right? So if an AI
yeah.
tells AI, which tells AI, which tells AI, the further you get away from the original person, the more like a game of telephone it's going to be, and more likely it's going to make those sorts of mistakes.
Yeah. I have this struggle in my head. I've spoken with large organizations and small ones alike, and the question comes up on a frequent basis, which is I'm weighing right now whether or not I should push my organization to just test and fail and be on the bleeding edge of technology,
Mm,
giving an integrated development environment open or MCP available, a contextual space where people can connect all these dots together, just giving it to my staff to just test it and run with it, make
hmm.
errors, but do it within a sandbox. I
Yeah.
feel like the other side of it is, oof, we want to be restrictive, we want to really be slow, and I see the playing out of large enterprise and small, dynamic, flexible organizations pitting against each other. Even in the space of AI, you still see them saying, "How conservative do I get?" versus
Hmm.
how I'll tee this one up a little bit. How sloppy should I be in allowing some of that stuff to just kind of happen? And yet, I don't know what the solution is in there, but I feel like you may have a take on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea of giving them a sandbox, right? Giving agents, AI, a
Mhm.
sandbox to kind of play in where they don't have sensitive data. Their decisions aren't going to be relied on for critical, business processes, and let them make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. I think by far the most important thing is that companies start to do something using AI and
Hmm.
they learn from the mistakes that happen from AI and they just continuously improve and refine what guardrails, what defenses they want to put in place. Um,
Okay.
for a long time, my role in cybersecurity was to think about bad things that could happen and prevent them. And so I exercised that skill a lot, 10, 15 years of what bad things could happen, how do we prevent them. And I loved it,
Hmm.
secretly, don't tell anyone. I loved it when I said that something bad could go wrong. The business decided to do nothing about it, but then that bad thing happened, right? I loved that because it kind of justified to me and it reinforced to me as a security person that we should have prevented it. And I don't know that that's always right. Like I don't think now that I look at things from a more business perspective outside of cybersecurity, like we were saying before, like there's all these trade offs, and honestly, you just have to start somewhere, and it's not important that you start perfect or even close to perfect, but
Yeah.
all that matters is that you can make lots of small changes and measure them to get and see if you're getting better, right? If you can't measure it,
Hmm.
you can't manage it, and if you're not making lots of small changes, like if it takes 3 months or 6 months or even 3 weeks or 6 weeks nowadays to make changes, like it's not going to work. You got to be able to make lots of small decisions, and in order to make those decisions, like you need to have information or data, right? Like you need giant, giant piles of real data that AI didn't tell you, that some software told you, that some measurement device told you. And AI can try to summarize and evaluate,
Hmm.
look at, use it to diagnose, but AI can't make the data for you. You need to have some other system that's more deterministic. That if you gave it the same inputs, it would give you the same outputs over and over and over. You need a
Hmm.
system that works that way to gather the data and then use that data to drive decision making, to make lots of small changes, and just continuously improve. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's the only
We're-
way to win. And I've been beating this drum for like almost a decade now, with like company governance and like pre AI things, and it's just
yeah.
all AI did was put fuel on that fire.
Absolutely. Let me ask you something a little bit off the trail here.
Sure.
The point of structure within software development, whether or not we talk about something like waterfall or we might talk about an agile methodology, does the speed and the availability of sandboxes for development teams change that whole structure? Does it blow it up? Do we just operate with far more solutions in an agile methodology? What do you think it does
Yeah,
to a new methodology of writing code?
I think you're dead if you don't have a fast sandbox that's easily available.
Hmm.
Like uh, there's some companies that have for each product line, they have one testing area. And that's the only testing area that they have. It's the only thing that's even close to production. And, here's a secret, it's not the same as production, but it might be kind of close.
Mhm.
And they've got a team of 10 people all throwing things at the same environment. That is not going to work, right?
Mhm.
There's this idea of infrastructure as code, where you actually write code to deploy the systems that make up these test environments. And
Mhm.
if you don't have that already, like that becomes extremely critical. A lot of high maturity companies have that. In fact, that's what I do in my environment, where every single developer has their own test environment, 100% mirror of production. It's literally the same code pointed to a different AWS account. And that's really useful because I might have 10 agents running at the same time. And so, just if I have a dedicated sandbox environment just for me, I'm going to run into the same issues we used to run into with 10 people. But if I had 10 people with
Mhm.
10 agents each, now I have 100 people with their fingers in this system. It's just not going to work. My testing is not going to be reliable. It cannot work. But then if you step back and you say, I am going to use infrastructure as code, I give every developer their own sandbox environment, they're still going to want to make copies. And I'm still going to want 5 or 6 or 7 created on the fly sandboxes that I then have one agent that works in one sandbox. And when they're done, we
Mhm.
destroy the sandbox, we destroy the agent, we take the code, we push it to production. And we just do that over and over and over. And if you don't, it's not that you need to have that today, but if you don't have that on your radar and you're not working towards that, like there's
Mhm.
no way you're going to be able to adopt agents because agents are just going to speed you up. And if you can't test your stuff, then all you do is push slop, this failures, outages, quality issues, security issues, regulatory issues, right? It's just I just bucket all of that into slop. It's my favorite AI term.
Yeah.
It's just a complete mess. No one knows what's happening. AI can't figure it out. And the less structured your stuff is, the more sloppy it is. It's actually going to cause humans, but also agents to research it slower, right? If you have spaghetti code where this
Mhm.
thing calls this, and it's unique for every single code path, then AI is going to have to follow that path. And it's automated, but it's slow. And if you're doing that in response to a production outage, like you want it to be fast. And so the structure actually speeds up your agents as well, and reduces slop. It's got a million different benefits. Like you just want to have a very opinionated way of developing code, and then you push those opinions, you guardrail those agents with those opinions, and you can change your
Mhm.
opinions. You can refactor and make changes, but as long as you have that, you've got a lot of structure. You can speed up your development and reduce the slop.
Fair. So you mentioned agents a couple different times in there. Agents are a pretty profound change. I think that most in our world are still grappling with: do I use Google or do I, GPT it? There's obviously a lot of our communities, just citizens in the world, trying to figure out how AI manages this kind of space. I think organizations, especially those in regulated spaces, probably ones that are throwing a little bit more money at, have a bit more structure around how they might integrate agents into their business, into their organization. But tell us a little bit about that space, because frankly, when I think of Xenable, I think of agents. I think of these kind of rapid abilities to move things through the system. Is it is it a just is it just an automation, John, or should we be considering agents as something that we should continue to give performance evaluations to, just like people?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure about the performance evaluation thing, but that's an interesting idea. I mean, we
Fair.
should measure them, right? We should know how effective they are, and we should be able to change them to make them more or less effective. That's in line with what I was saying earlier with you need to have some sort of data on if it's working or not. And you're allowed to do whatever you want. Like in some cases, your data might be your customers' number of thumbs up and thumbs down they gave in a portal, right? That's perfectly good data.
Mhm.
It's not going to be something that you can just measure on demand because I'm sorry, I can't force a person to actually answer the surveys that get sent out. But you can send them out, you can incentivize, you can coupon and things like that, people to give you that feedback, and then take that to say, is the agent working, right? And chatbots are a perfect example of this
Yep.
because as you have a dialogue with a chatbot, people are going to use that thumbs up, thumbs down, especially thumbs down when they're angry, right? And so if they give no response, maybe you consider that neutral. You could even figure out the sentiment of how the dialogue is going. So even if they don't give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, you could say, Well, if this human keeps swearing at the AI, maybe that's just their vernacular, but perhaps they're a little frustrated, right? And so even
Sure.
without direct thumbs up, thumbs down, you can get an idea that they're frustrated, that they're unhappy, and say, well, how can we make those sorts of engagements happen less often? I think
Okay.
agents have a lot of different angles to kind of think about, and the main one that's popular right now in the software development space is what people are calling like loop engineering. And I've been doing that for not super long now, maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months, something like that, which feels like an eternity in the AI space.
Hmm.
But it's this idea where you kind of fit an agent into a role that has some sort of a loop where they, observe, orient, decide, act, observe, orient, decide, act, right? That's an OODA loop. There's lots of
Hmm.
different types of loops, but just something conceptually like that.
Okay.
And so I have loops that happen for performance, right? It just looks through my code base and finds where I did two calls to a database that could be one, right? That's just going to be faster, right? I have
Hmm.
things in my code base that look for dead code, where we used to use some software and it's no longer being used by anything. It's just dead. It's orphaned, and we'll kind of like clean that up. These sort of like maintenance jobs that I can do. Maybe it's constant. Like I could have something looking at my logs saying, are there errors? Are there warnings? And
Hmm.
what can I do something about them? And if so, give me a suggestion on what to do about it. That would be something that runs 24/7. What
Hmm.
I use more so for a loop is something that would maybe run on a daily basis. So every day, look at the last day of activity and say, is there something I can improve? What's the slowest part of my stack? Because, as much as we speed things up, there's always a slowest part, right? And there's always like the
Yeah.
most opportune for an improvement. And so I just have agents every night. They go and they look for the most, what's the number one most opportune thing? Let's fix that one thing. And then tomorrow, you're going to find the new most opportune thing to improve, and just kind of like how
Hmm.
many of these can I run at once? And it takes time. Like if you are currently using ChatGPT and asking questions and getting answers and copy and pasting things, like it's simply going to take some number of months for you to kind of move up the like thinking level and to stop thinking at like kind of low level, what does the software look like, to what does the software to what outcomes am I achieving, to what's the impact of these outcomes on my measurable, like metrics for my company. And you just kind of like keep
Hmm.
moving yourself up, and you're building this system of loops and jobs that are just handling that for you. But you don't just do it, right? Like you have
Yeah.
to actually take the steps and move up. Nobody jumps from here to here, right? You have to step up because your mind, you have to like adjust to this. And I think that's a big part of where we're at right now is just like everybody's adjusting. Everyone's somewhere. They're progressing at some speed. Um,
Yeah.
and like we're getting used to where we're at and then getting told that we need to go further. We need to go faster. We need to abstract higher, which is tricky, but it's a
It
kind of an
is.
evolutionary thing.
It is. And I'm going to bring this into a very specific niche around healthcare because uh,
Mm-hmm.
healthcare audits notoriously painful, right? They are the space of I got an email, 3 months ago, and it told me to get 200 sampled rows or 200 cases of this, and you spend 3 months trying to find all these files, and you eventually create this wonderful little packet that you then send out to the regulatory firm or the audit firm that's going to be coming in, and they show up a week later and they sit down with you for 8 hours in a boardroom and sift through paperwork after paperwork, asking you
Mm-hmm.
questions about some ridiculous case from 4 years ago, right?
Yep,
That
I've been there.
that pain is something that is evolving, and it's evolving very, very rapidly. And this is where, when I think about how our organizations are managing it, Zenable is in a fascinating space. And I'm going to combine these two here in just a quick
Mm-hmm.
second. With Zenable's capabilities of managing and iterating on the performance of agents to the SOPs or its structure or its own identified standards that it should be moving toward, and I think about those patterns that auditors have as an example, the old
Mm-hmm.
school kind of stuff. They've got to be doing something that's iterating on that as well. And so in my head, help me connect the pieces for our audience when we think about agents, which you've been talking about, and their ability to kind of iterate. What do you think that's going to ultimately look like when we get to that boardroom table with those auditors? Are they going to now say, "Listen, I don't need 200 cases. I want all of the cases because I've
Yeah.
got AI helping me." Like, where do you think that's going?
First of all, I think that's super interesting. I mentioned I had a cybersecurity company before, and there's a subfield in cybersecurity called governance, risk, and compliance, and that's
Hmm.
actually kind of what we did. In fact, my role was technically how do we write software before AI? How do I write software to provide evidence for those audits? And how do I do that all year long so that we make sure that when an audit pops up, because a lot of customers have the right to audit anytime they want. One might just pop up and say, hey, next week we're coming out and we're going to audit you. I'm going to need blah, blah, blah. You want to be ready, right? You want to be kind of
Hmm.
continuously ready. So I wrote this automation by hand for 7 or 8 years, right? And then AI came around, and now I'm starting to do similar things for software developers specifically, but that are in heavily regulated spaces, right? That are going to have these regulatory organizations come audit them, or customers audit them, or you have SOC 2 or ISO, or in healthcare you've got high trust, right? Government you have FedRAMP. There's
Yeah,
all these
I trust
frameworks.
it,
They're
of
all
course.
complicated, but they all boil down to really the same thing. Can you provide some
Hmm.
assurance that you're doing either what you said you would do or what we told you to do, right? Like all of the frameworks boil down to one of those two buckets. You set your own rules. Are you following them? Prove it. Or we told you what you need to do. Prove that you're doing everything that we said, right? And
Hmm.
in order to do that, I mean, there's never proof, right? We never have 100% certainty. But what everybody wants is evidence, right? Can you evidence? Can you show that you are? And so if you come at everything with a data first angle, then data becomes your evidence. And perhaps your evidence is kind of like messy. A good example of messy evidence is, did you discuss this in a meeting with the decision makers, right? There's a lot of frameworks that require that every quarter, every 3 months, that a meeting is held and the top concerns, the risks that you're cataloging as an organization were presented to people who could make a signature and give you the money to solve them. And they can decide if they want to spend that money or not. That's not what they're auditing. What they're auditing is, did those people get properly presented with the right information to make an informed decision? That's what we need. But you can turn that into evidence too, right? Like why can't we?
Yep.
Why can't we have transcripts of the meeting? Why can't we have the calendar invite of the meeting? We can write software that says if there's not a calendar invite that has at least one of this group of people and one of these group of people, right? The people who are presenting and the people that are receiving the information. If that doesn't exist
Hmm.
in my organization at least once every quarter, and if there's not next steps, meeting minutes, transcripts, something like that, then it didn't happen. Or maybe you're a little forward thinking and you say, well, if that's not scheduled, then and there's only 1 month left in this quarter, we need to at least get it scheduled. These people are busy, it's not, so you can kind of get these warning signals ahead of time. Like why can't you
Hmm.
just make alarms, alerts, uh, data that looks for those sorts of things? But everything has evidence, right? And so if you can see it on a dashboard and you can do these checks that auditors love to do. My favorite check. So again, I used to just be in audits like every month, almost borderline every week. I was in some sort of an
Yeah.
audit for one of my customers. The best auditor question in the world is, I see here that you said all of these things need to do this thing. Okay.
Hmm.
All of your laptops need to be in your asset inventory. Okay. How many laptops do you have? 1,000. Great. Where's your asset inventory? It's right here. Okay. Filter on laptops. Are there 1,000? No? Why not? And they just sit back and
Yeah.
they say, why is it not perfect? Well, over here you said that it
Hmm.
had to be perfect and it's not. So why isn't it? But you know what else you could do? You could run that exact report every single day. You can get an alert when it's out of sync. And when you get an alert when it's out of sync, if you're doing it every day, well, you know that yesterday it was fine and today it's not. So the window of where you're looking is one day, right? In the last
Hmm.
day, what happened? That's going to be a lot more fresh than if you do this every quarter. In the last 3 months, what happened? I have no clue, especially company wide, right? And
Yeah.
so, again, just kind of to summarize a little bit, giant piles of evidence, lots of data that is looked at automatically on a recurring basis, that looks forward, that looks back. Put yourself in a really good position. And that's a lot of the sort of stuff that we build at Xenable is we integrate all of that whole idea of gathering data and evidence and then reevaluating it. Are we doing the right things? And
Hmm.
improving the roles that we set for ourselves, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, should the role say all? or should it say 90%? Like, the difference between 90% and all is usually a giant bucket of money, right? It's a lot of effort, and maybe it's not actually good reduced risk. So if you just say 90% is what we're going to hold ourselves accountable to, in some cases, the auditor will come in and they're going to audit against the 90%, not 100%. And so now you've given yourself wiggle room. Maybe that's okay if you're lower maturity. And as you get higher maturity, maybe you want to move 90 to 95 to 98 to 99.9, etc. Like, no one says they have 100% uptime. Everybody has
Yeah.
99.99% uptime. Why don't we allow us a little, a little play for our governance and for our standards and compliance? I feel like it's a very reasonable
Yeah.
thing.
That's reasonable. I like probably the clearest evidence for having a reasonable governance. Like I wish I would have
Yeah.
had you at a few of those tables, thinking back on some of those boardrooms from yesteryear. But I will say we're as we sort of get towards the end here, I I'm thinking about telephone again, and your sort of comment
Mm.
about what one agent talking to another agent, and that comes up not often yet, but most certainly I can understand when you start thinking about agents being in the system. An agent does one specific task, and then hands it off to another agent that does one specific task, and then oh wait a minute, who's making sure that that agent actually did that task well? Is there another agent that manages that? Is there like an orchestration agent that sits over these other agents? And frankly, when I have a manager that used to sit over me, did that person always get it right? I don't know. Is that orchestration agent so all seeing and all knowing and all doing that it can actually create better performing ecosystems of digital workforces? And it's a curiosity of mine of where does the line stop when we start thinking about the larger view of how agents play, and can you
Yeah.
actually have what I might call an agent workforce doing something when telephone is in fact a reality? I don't know
Yeah.
how you answer that in 30 seconds, John, but I'm gonna give you a shot. Like you go for it.
Yeah. 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 Um, so first of all, I'll say that there's a lot of different agent architectures. And so one of them is an orchestrator, where you have someone whose job is an agent whose job is just to orchestrate all the different agents. And that's kind of a hierarchical top-down approach. That is, I think, what I would say is right now the most common because it works well for our mind. You can get your head around it. There are other options as
Hmm.
well, though, and one of them is called Swarm. And the swarm based approach is that anyone can talk to anyone and do anything. And it's a little advanced, it's a little crazy. You get into really interesting problems with like identity and the telephone game and asking the
Yeah.
wrong agent to do things in those sorts of cases. But it can work. So there's a lot of different agent architectures, orchestrator swarms. But generally, I think what you're talking about is how do you know an agent did a good job? Like that could be even something separate that can work in tandem with an orchestrator or a swarm called judging, or LLM as a judge, these large language models as a judge. And all we're saying is there's two roles here. You're the doer, you're the checker, right? This
Hmm.
agent does it, and then when it's done, it gets checked before it goes to wherever it's going to be used, right? Maybe it's the orchestrator, maybe it's, something else. And so can you build a judging model? Yes. Is it fast? No. Is it expensive? Yes. But you can do it, right? And so we use this all the
Yeah.
time for selective checking and judging and evaluation. And you can even have multiple layers of judges, but it costs money and time. So again, trade
Okay.
offs. Do you have time and money or not?
Yeah, that's fair. Um, I'm appreciative of course of your time here, John, because you feel I feel like you're informing us on levels that I think our audience may not be fully aware of. You're sort of tipping your hat into some spaces that probably deserve an hour of each of these questions, honestly, because I do, I'm kind of wondering how do you wrap up a conversation like this that's only 30 minutes long, but could likely be 3 hours worth of conversation. And the reality is that I think Zenable is one of those organizations that, if I can put words in your mouth, is an organization that not only understands where we've been, but certainly is putting a bit of a pulse in the world of what we should do to help manage our systems. And as we develop agents and automations within our organizations, how do we make sure that they consistently perform to the standards that we expect them to? How do they understand what that is, and how do they continue to judge whether or not they're doing it? I know as a human, I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I've been tasked with, hey, keep your skills strong, right? Keep educating yourself. Keep
Mm-hmm.
managing up your line. Make sure you're walking into the industry and understanding where the pulse of the industry is going. Make sure you're part of community boards. Like you get this sort of view of the world of where your organization wants to push you. And I'm wondering at what point that happens within our agent workforce and how you start to emulate whether or not that is a reality, or are we simply just personifying something that shouldn't be? And frankly, agents need to know their role, and their role is not to be
Yeah.
a human. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know where that's at, but let me pause. I'm gonna give you the last time that you want, and take us where you want to go because your mind's full of stuff.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting. Yeah, I think roles and identity for these agent is a big part of what the future looks like. How do they know what their limits are? Because again, these are just AIs, and they're
Mhm.
all AIs. Most AIs are trained to be helpful assistants, which means that they want to help with everything, anything that they can, anything that they think that they're equipped to. And
Yeah.
so, um, some people would say withholding information is actually useful so that they don't go outside of scope of what they're supposed to be doing, their roles and responsibilities. I'm not sure if I agree with that or not. I think that withholding access to information is a part of the key there. So, can you give it an identity that can only access the data that it should based on what its role is? Set up a persona just like we do roles, JDs, job descriptions in organizations.
Mhm.
Give it that as its soul. If you use OpenClaw, they have this thing called a soul.md, and that's
Yeah.
just like, here's what you're here to do. All of our agents are going to start having these souls and responsibilities. We could talk about this for hours. I totally agree. In
Wow.
fact, I
Wow.
teach a course which is 40 hours in a 1 week period, and I talk about this in detail, hands on, all the fun stuff. Um, we have a
Man,
lot of challenges ahead of ourselves.
we
Agents
do.
are here, they're going to keep going faster. We can ground them in data. If I can have, one takeaway from this whole conversation is grounding the agents in data is the best way to make sure they make good decisions, and they're never going to make perfect decisions. And I'm excited to see where we're going to go. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it couldn't have said it much better than that. I mean, if you want to have data informed decisions, which has been on the lips of executives for decades, let's make sure we're
Yeah.
data informed in making our decisions, right? We should hold the exacting standards for our agents, and frankly, maybe even more so because they depend on it, and certainly the output is something that we depend on. If that's going to be the case, boy, you had better be giving it the right information. So
Mhm.
I'm with you, John. I certainly appreciate your time. I will thank you profusely for all the insights you've given us here, and we might even have to invite you back for a bit of that 40 hours worth of training that you're giving everybody else. So
This is
thank
a
you
lot
for
of
your
fun.
time today, and
Absolutely.
we'll be back.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, man.